know this group. Ask him to talk and there's no problem. It's great. Nothing happens unless we listen to each other. So, you probably recalled yesterday, and I'm moving now because I promised Michael Brown I was going to move. I actually told him I'd do a couple of head things, so that he's trying to follow me. You probably remember yesterday at Susan's first talk, she talked about the 4 ways that we go about being and supporting people of salt and light in our parishes, in our communities. And one was by praying together, right? By praying together. Well, if you look at John Mitchell's story, right, one of the things that enabled him to be open to the movement of the Spirit as he became a judge was the fact that he was part of a community that prayed together, right? A very intense community. Anybody that's been involved in Cursillo and the Fourth Day weekly meetings of accountability and support of fellow people who have been through the Cursillo. But I think it's just really important as we think about, as pastors, as deacons, as parish leaders, as ministers in the church and in the diocese, that nothing happens of the Spirit if prayer isn't at the center of it, right? Maybe good things, as Jack said yesterday, some good things can happen. But if there are to be Spirit-led things, if there are to be gospel-led things, there has to be prayer at the center of it. And praying together. So of course, private prayer is very important, but communal prayer, liturgy, prayer groups, cursillos, all the various forms of communities and prayer traditions that our church has, all are available to us. But as we're trying to motivate and enable and animate people in our parishes and in the diocese to be people of salt and light, prayer has to be at the beginning, in the middle, and the end. The second one was reaching out together, right? Reaching out together. Jack had that great triangle, the Bermuda Triangle, where he grew up in Clearwater, and kind of that image of Christ going and kicking people out of it, right? We have to go out and reach out to others together. I want to tell you a story about someone who has done some amazing things here in this area, in Boise, who has reached out to others, other Christians, non-Christians, people of different faith traditions, to work together to solve problems and to right injustices. And many of you know this man. It's Henry Kruer, right? Everybody knows Henry. Saint Henry, a lot of us call him. This is, I'm going to read an article to Tim Woodward, who's also a member of this parish, retired statesman, columnist. Tim wrote a year ago about St. Henry. Henry, this check is made out to the county. Shouldn't it be made out to me? Henry, can I get 2 bus passes? Henry, the coffee machine is leaking. Henry Kruer sits in the worn chair in his cramped office where he spends his days dealing with seemingly endless questions and complaints. He has done this for a decade now. This was a year ago. He was 80 years old and he looks tired. I am tired, he said. It's time for me to be cutting back. This month, a year ago, Kruer will step down as mission coordinator of Corpus Christi Homeless Shelter. Considering all he does there, the title is modest. Kruer co-founded the day shelter in 2003 and has overseen almost every facet of its operation since then, from finance and administration to personally easing the burdens of homelessness. Need a ride, a meal, an emergency, money, someone to fix a problem, be an advocate, break up a fight? See Henry. He estimates that 100 people a day have used the shelter services since it opened in December of 2003. Kruer and his wife Kathy have been there almost every day of that time. She keeps the books, makes runs to the Idaho Food Bank, and helps out in myriad other ways. If not for the Kruers, countless people would have gone hungry and not had a safe place to get out of the cold. just as a parenthetical, the problem in Boise and many other cities is the overnight shelters kick you out at 7 a.m. and you can't go back until 5 or 7, sometime in the evening. Where do you go if you're homeless in a city? Lots of cities, including Seattle, have sit and lie laws. You can't lie or sit on the sidewalk. You can't, they don't like you hanging out in the parks. There's nowhere to go. I met the Crewers in 2002. A homeless man had drowned in the Boise River, and Henry Crewer wanted to talk to me about a story, about what was and wasn't being done for the city's homeless population. He and Kathy were serving meals at Community House, which was the overnight shelter in Boise at the time, and working to build what would become Corpus Christi House. His next step after our interview was for a sleeping bag to give a homeless man sleeping outside while dying of cancer. It made an impression. When I retired from the Statesman 3 years ago, I joined the many volunteers who helped keep Corpus Christi running. So, right, there's the encounter. Henry, not knowing it, was the agent for the Holy Spirit, inviting Tim to become involved in the work. My contribution is small, a couple of mornings a month, but it's been enough to learn how much the shelter means to those who need it. I've seen people shivering after a winter night in the streets, grateful beyond words for a warm bagel and hot coffee. I've seen the gratitude on the faces of those desperate for a ride to a job interview, a doctor's appointment, as they join one of the Crewers in their 8-year-old Toyota Prius. Time and again, I've seen Henry Crewer respond to an urgent request by reaching for his wallet and handing over his own money. His response to those who say the homeless are loafers who live off of handouts, quote, "You can say that about any group of people, and you'd be right most of the time." He himself grew up poor in a tough neighborhood in Brooklyn, New York. If you've heard Henry in Brooklyn, he still comes through. He became a Franciscan brother and says, quote, "Everything I am, I owe to them. But I was limited in teaching, and I wanted to work with poor people. So I moved to Canada, worked at a school where he met his future bride, then found a job, quote, helping poor Native people stand on their own 2 feet and get an education. I was very content there, but then Canada tightened up on immigration. We had to come back to the States. So in 1976, the Crewers moved to Boise, where Henry became a chemistry and physics teacher at Bishop Kelly High School. He has a degree in biology and endocrinology. He was known as a tough teacher. That's what I hear. Which he defines as having high expectations. He worked as a soup kitchen volunteer in his free time, and in '96 retired from teaching to devote the rest of his life to helping the poor. Quote, it makes me real, he said, in his Brooklyn accent, still palpable. Saying you're a Christian and living it are 2 different things. Quote, I've formed many friendships among the homeless. There are things that we can do here for them and things we can't. We give them a home base, a place where it's easy to be good. It's a profound statement, a place where it's easy to be good. There are, he says, 2 kinds of homelessness. One is temporary, people who lose jobs and homes and need help before getting back on their feet. Those people come and go, and it's a good thing. I just got a call from one who used to be here and is in Kansas now. He has his contractor's license, and he wanted to hire somebody from Corpus Christi. Others are chronically homeless. Corpus Christi works with various agencies to give them housing and continued support. Citing Utah, which now saves several $1,000s a year per homeless person by providing them with housing rather than operating shelters. So there's kind of a moving into changing the system. He hopes for a time when Boise no longer needs shelters. Until then, he'll continue to volunteer at Corpus Christi 6 days a week, but shorter time each day. Mark Schlegel, a Mennonite pastor, will take over his post as mission coordinator. The shelter is non-denominational. Crewer says of Mark, he gets it. He knows, as I do, that there's a great satisfaction in doing this. It's a difference between just going to church and living your faith. So Corpus Christi, now this is no longer the article, Corpus Christi House was founded by a community that involved Catholics, Mennonites, Quakers, people of no faith, people of some faith, people of questionable faith, but people who had a heart for doing something about the homeless during particularly cold winter days, but hot summer days as well. Henry reached out to this community, but something that Tim didn't write about. Corpus Christi House has also set up a program called Step Up, which provides educational opportunities for the men and women at the shelter so they can get their GED or begin to work on college courses and become literate so that they can stand on their own 2 feet, get work, and move out of homelessness. They also work on employment readiness. Something else Tim didn't write about Henry. Henry is a seamless garment pro-life Catholic. He, at one time, was the Respect Life director for the Diocese of Boise, deeply committed to ending abortion and to pro-life issues. I've seen Henry at many marches for life. I've also seen Henry out on the corner of 8th and Bannock, thank you very much, at 8th and Bannock, protesting the death penalty. At noon, Wednesdays I think, week after week after week after year after year. Henry is there. He's been out at the prison protesting when they've been executing somebody. Henry is a ceaseless, endless advocate for the respect for the dignity of every human life. And he's testified in front of the legislature about the death penalty, about homelessness. He's testified in front of the city council about unjust laws that criminalize being homeless. Henry, in my view, is the perfect example of someone who is driven to meet immediate needs, but also has a passion for ending those laws, those policies, the situations in society that are against justice and human dignity. The other 2 things that, in addition to praying together, reaching out together, which Henry's a great example of that, bringing people together, are learning. So education is important, learning together, and then acting together. And of course, both Judge Mitchell and Henry Kruer are great examples of that. I want to draw your attention now to this little handout that we put in front of you. And I want to ask you to take a couple of minutes. Let's give you until 10 after, so like another 7-minute period. Take a couple of minutes to read through this and talk about it at your table and see how you read here applies to the 2 stories I've told you already of Judge John Mitchell and St. Henry.